As the commuter trains line up at Boston's North Station, the Mountaineer backs in to pick up passengers for its run to Littleton, New Hampshire. The train provided Bostonians a convenient and comfortable way to travel to the fashionable White Mountains for weekends or vacations at the resort hotels, the camps, or summer homes. The original Mountaineer was a seasonal train from Boston to Intervale, where a through parlor car was carried over the main central to Lancaster on train 158. In 1930, the train ran weekends only, and service was suspended during the Depression. It was resumed for the 1939 season when the Budd-built streamlined Flying Yankee train was put on as the Mountaineer. For the 1946 season, passenger demand dictated a larger capacity, so a standard consist was assembled, and steam power once again pulled the train. When new E7 diesels arrived from EMD, they were assigned to this run and were the only diesels running over the main central's mountain division for several years. Our coverage of the Mountaineer is just after the E units had arrived. The train consisted of comfortable wine-red coaches and a most inviting dining car. The entire train was cooled by an ice-activated system. Departing on rails of the Boston and Maine, it would join the tracks of the main central at Intervale, New Hampshire, for the run to Whitefield, and rejoin the B&M line to Woodsville. The train will call at Mount Whittier, Glen and Jackson, Bretton Woods, Crawford Notch, and other resort locations. Photographer Stan Whitney suggested a trip on the Mountaineer or Maine Central's 162 out of Portland to Crawford Notch or to Bartlett, where one could observe the operations of the road close up. Either way, this was mountain railroading at its best. Leaving Boston's North Station, the Mountaineer rolls north, crossing the Massachusetts line into New Hampshire. Then, continuing northward to the famous lake region, Squam, Little Squam, and sprawling Lake Winnipesaukee. Bearing farther on to the north, the Mountaineer reached Conway, North Conway, Intervale, and the spectacular Mount Washington Valley. The dining car offered some delicious, traditional New England cooking. At Intervale, the B&M crew will turn the train over to their main central counterparts as the train enters the Mountain Division. While the train pauses, the chef passes out a snack to a neighborhood dog who, no doubt, meets the train every day. A caboose is provided for the crew, laying over until the late afternoon return of the train en route back to Boston. Leaving Bartlett, the train begins a 15-mile climb to Crawford Notch. crossing Sawyer's River. At this point, we pass the site of the abandoned Sawyer River Railroad. This lumber line was built in 1876 as a southeastern connection to the Portland and Ogdensburg. Its first locomotive, the C.W. Saunders, was named for the principal owner of the lumber company and railroad. Notchland, formerly named Bemis. Frankenstein Trestle, 500 feet long and 80 feet high. The track runs hard by the shoulders of Mount Washington. The Willey House Station, built by the P&O in 1875, was originally named Avalanche, and with good reason. The Willey Brook Bridge stands 140 feet in length and crosses a 90-foot gorge against the towering face of Mount Willard. At the end of Willey Brook Bridge stood the Mount Willard section house dwelling. Built in 1887, the house was home to section foremen and their families. For them, the railroad was their only link to the outside world, with all supplies such as groceries, clothing, coal, and so on being delivered by their trains. With the main line only 20 feet from the front porch, the windows were covered by heavy screens to prevent breakage by ice and rocks tossed from passing snowplows. The best-known occupants were the family of section foreman Loring Staples Evans, whose wife Hattie gave birth to 4 children there. With each birth, a special train brought the doctor up from Bartlett. With the house perched on the ledge, the children were confined to the small yard where they built a tiny baseball diamond. And to keep the tots off the track, Mrs. Evans tied them to the front porch with clothesline. As they grew up and attended school, they commuted by train, with westbound train crews scooping them up off the ground without stopping on the heavy grade. An attached building housed the section crew. On Thanksgiving Day, 1913, a blizzard dumped heavy snow in the Narch. Loring and his crew went to Crawford, where they were clearing switches of snow when he mistook a helper engine of a westbound freight of going on to Fabian's. The engine cut off at Crawford and, backing down to Bartlett, struck and killed him. After that, Mrs. Evans continued living in the house and worked for the railroad, cooking for the section crews and raising her family until her retirement in 1942. through the gateway of Crawford Notch. The Mountaineer arrives at Crawford Notch Station. Next to the depot stood the famous Crawford House, a resort hotel that received many of its guests and its supplies from the railroad. The Mountain Division lines in this picture approach from Portland at the lower right, with the B&M at the lower center. From Intervale, the picture follows the main central beyond Fabian's, where a B&M connection was located. The line to Beecher Falls was served by a mixed train. From sea level at Portland, the line's profile climbed. From Bartlett, the heavy grade to Crawford is clearly shown, rising 1,225 feet in 15 miles, requiring most trains to employ extra engines and pushers. For those who revere the magnificence of the mountains and thrill to the struggle of the iron horse on mountain grades, no better place in New England could be found than Crawford Notch. As we stand by the track at Bartlett in the cold, gray hour of dawn, night freight 376 approaches from Portland, performs a little switching, receives its helpers, and begins the 15-mile climb to the gateway. Chartered in 1867, the Portland and Ogdensburg was under construction by 1869. In 1888, the line was leased to Maine Central, who then extended the track to Lunenburg, Vermont, to connect with the St. Johnsbury and Lake Champlain Railroad. In 1925, the Maine Central consolidated its Mountain Division with the Portland Division. And in 1943, the P&O lease was canceled and Maine Central assumed ownership of the line. Having cut off at Crawford, the pushers returned to Bartlett. Because Mr. Whitney filmed this picture over a period of several days, some schedules show one engine in one shot and two in another. Now that the night freight is well on its way, an extra arrives at Bartlett in the glare of an early morning ground fog to set out LCL, pick up any westbound cars, and a helper for the climb to Crawford. Ground fog envelops the train as it pauses at the depot for the pusher to couple up. Then the assault begins, with the train coming out of the fog.